welcome back to the Marketing Boost. I have Franklin Morris here today. He is the founder and CEO of KeepTabz.
Correct. You got both my name and the company name correct.
Yeah, it took me a time or two, but we got to go. As soon as the camera turns on, it's like the mind goes blank and everything gets higher pressure.
Yeah.
You could put me in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
Not too big, maybe 200-300 people. Totally fine. Not going to mess up. Put me in front of a camera, I break down.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be viewed by millions, so
we can hope one day.
Yeah.
Cool. I want to talk. You're building KeepTabz, and I want to set the tone for everything. But I want to hear about that. I want to hear what it is. I want to get that elevator pitch in the front. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a marketing background, just like me. We've been through. We've worked with a lot of B2B SaaS. We've worked in different kind of industries and with big companies and small companies. We do some mentoring here at Geekdom, and I want to see kind of where that is comparison to building, a startup, and especially, jumping into that after a career of building startups for other people.
Yep.
So the first place, though, let's start with the pitch. What is KeepTabz?
What is KeepTabz? KeepTabz is competitive intelligence software. It's powered by AI. We use AI pervasively throughout the product, but it does much more than you can do with AI alone. And so the premise and why I called it that is because it helps you keep tabs on everything your competitors are up to without literally keeping 50 tabs open on everything your competitors are up to, copying and pasting what you find into a doc you never look at again, which I've discovered and I've in my lived experience is how this is still done in 2026, like the era of AI.
So for the most basic, I explain it to a fifth grader, it is keeping tabs, the pun intended, on your competitors. So figuring out what are they doing, messaging. I'm using the product for one of the startups I'm invested in helping on, and I find it really useful to see, oh, hey, they changed pricing, or, oh, man, they're rolling out a new feature set that isn't even hit, press or any of that.
Yeah, exactly. So we bring together kind of all the data you'd care about as a marketer. That's like news, reviews, social media activity, SEO performance. We track all the pricing pages, all the terms of service agreements, everything like that. Stuff that you just don't have time to actually do, and so oftentimes doesn't get done. It's stuff that big companies have large teams of people to do. And so my impetus to start the company was that I wanted there to be, I felt like every company should be able to have enterprise level competitive intelligence, not just the big guys. And so, 100% correct.
And you got that information, you got that idea from working inside of a venture scaled business and then also other businesses, right? So
so for the last 4 years, I was a VP of marketing at Alloy AI. It's a company in the retail analytics space. And during my 4-year stint there, I noticed a massive change in the market. Like at the beginning of that time, people either...
It's COVID too, so...
Yeah.
Nightmare of a time to be in the logistics, even the marketing side of that business.
Exactly, yeah. And so it was like at the beginning, people either bought our product or did nothing. And by the end of it, it was like every deal had multiple competitors. There was downward pricing pressure. There were competitors launching features, and it was too much for me as a VP of marketing to keep up with, even though it's my job to know the market, to enable the rest of the company on what the market is doing. It's literally in my title, marketing, right? And so, I just wanted a product that would do something really simple. It seemed simple to me. It turns out it's actually pretty hard once we set out to build it. But it would basically just track everything I cared about and alert me to the important stuff. And I couldn't find anything that could do it for less than, or at a price point I could afford, right?
Okay.
Like most of the products that do this are, $30,000-$40,000.
Enterprise value, and that's where you saw the gap in the market.
Exactly.
Is just a lower kind of tier, not enterprise pricing, where all of us are getting ripped off in some capacity.
Yeah, correct. With 2-month implementation times and really long time to value, really long sales cycles and all of that. So I dreamed of a product that would be just swipe a credit card, you're up and running and seeing value within a day. And so that's what we've built. I
like it. The one part I want to back up a little bit is keeping tabs on your competitors. Mm-hmm. Everyone talks about it in varying ways. I think the market, intelligence is a market out there. Mm-hmm. However, a lot of people say ignore your competitors. Don't worry about them. Focus on what you're building. Some people say steal from the competitors and innovate, and then other people kind of toe the middle line of you need to essentially see an update and activate and change your message too, because the market's moving. Like,
Yeah.
where do you land in that sphere for anybody that's doing marketing?
Well, again, I go back to the word itself, marketing, right? Like, I feel like for maybe the last decade or so, marketing has been more like ing than market. It's been just about doing activities and maybe not paying as much attention to the market. But I feel like with AI in particular, now it's like the cost of doing a lot of marketing activities at scale has dropped to close to nothing. So multiple companies in this building with 2 employees are sending thousands of cold outreach emails. All of the ad channels are like completely saturated, right? LinkedIn, I mean, my God, my LinkedIn feed is just like a whole bunch of like lead magnets and stuff, right? So I think the companies that are winning are going to be the ones that understand their market, that understand what the customers want. Like, I think Steve Jobs famously talked about how he didn't pay attention to competitors.
Yeah, that's
much.
one person that I think of out there, and the irony is now Apple pays attention to every competitor.
Yeah, and I would say to like anybody listening, you're probably not Steve Jobs. And whether you're paying attention to competitors or not, your customers definitely are. Like, you actually don't get to determine who your competitors are. That's determined by your customers probably before they even get on a sales call. And so you have to be, if you're talking about the value you're providing or the features you have that customers should care about, like, there's no better way to get a pulse on what actually matters than to look at what competitors are saying, what's working, what customers are saying about competitors in reviews and interviews and things like that.
I think the competitor part with the reviews is really important, because if you can see what is happening in pain points from other competitors, that's also a selling tool. If you see pricing as a constant conversation with all the competitors, you can come in and say, hey, pricings are transparent, clear. It's just like car dealerships. Everyone hates a car dealership, but the car dealerships that do it well are like, we're transparent pricing, no haggle, one thing or another. And while they have the headwinds in the market, they are able to tackle on it. And I think it's also a really great way for somebody starting out to go and figure out like where that gap is. Like, hey, if you can read 1,000 reviews, or have AI kind of parse it and say, hey, here's the pain points, here's the good, and here's where you can compete on. I think that gives you like a jump start in talking to people versus going out there and say, hey, what do you think about this product? Like, where are you at? Which a lot of people inevitably end up doing.
Yeah, and reviews are actually a controversial thing in marketing and in product marketing and competitive intelligence marketing and stuff.
All kind of lies.
Yeah, well, because so the problems are that a lot of them are incentivized, right? A lot of times, you'll get a gift card in order to go write a good review on G2 or something like that. Or you just have to wade through so much noise to actually find the important signals. And that's why I think AI unlocks the ability to quickly identify feature gaps, to quickly identify like common consistent complaints across thousands of reviews or hundreds of reviews. And that, I think, is like where reviews begin to be important. It's one data point, right, that you can look at to sort of triangulate what's happening in the market and what customers actually want.
I agree with that, and I think the noise is a big problem, and I think that is the problem with marketing right now. There's so much noise. To your point, LinkedIn has shifted from being whatever it was in the past to being influencer central. X is no longer as influential, while some people argue that. And then on top of that, there's just so much junk. You can turn out blog posts, even really well-researched ones, in hours versus the days that it took before. I think there's so much more to track and keep tabs on that is becoming harder and harder. Like, how, like, as you were marketing this business and you've got a history, how are you trying to like actually get out there and market? Is it events? Is it talking to people? Or are you just like playing a volume game too and also pairing it with something?
Yeah, I think you just have to do a lot of stuff. And when I was talking to you about this beforehand. I'm going to use that terrible analogy.
Yeah.
So like, in the past, I've had dogs, and I would get a dog that was 6 months old, and it would pee on the floor, and I would say no and feel like I potty trained it. And then one day I got a dog that was like 6 weeks old, and I realized like I've never potty trained a dog in my life. Like, I had inherited potty trained dogs. And so I've grown companies from like 5 to 10 million or 10 to 25 million, but it's amazing how much you inherit when you do that, right? And I don't want to like say that.
And that's the infrastructure of
Yeah.
like even a 2-3 year old business has an infrastructure of marketing and brand voice, like all of that, right?
Yeah, in finding product market fit, like ideally by that point, companies would have already done that, or
Yeah.
at least eliminated markets that are not a good fit. They would have some sense and like historical record of what channels actually worked, and like whether they didn't work because the channel is crap for this audience, or whether they didn't work because execution was off on that channel. Like, and then just the fact that like once you've been out there for a while, like marketing in the software space today, where there's so many vendors competing for attention. It's about building trust with your audience. Like Clay, we all know Clay, even if we've never used it, because it's like a product that through marketing has built a ton of trust, right? And when you're building trust from zero, it's a lot harder. And think of you come from the SEO world, right? And so think about even just like domain rating and like the trust that's involved in that. When you start a company and your domain rating is 0, right?
Yeah.
Like people think of you as spam. And so I would say the initial push is about building credibility and trust. And so that comes from people using the product, loving the product, talking about why they love the product, evangelizing the product. And that's stuff that in the early days doesn't really scale. It's finding individual customers that it can be really high value for, listening to their feedback to improve the product. A lot of it is like just one-to-one conversations. Like, we're not a high-priced product. We're a pretty low-priced product, right? Like sub $100. And so ideally, as a product like ours scales, we would have kind of something akin to a PLG motion. It's product-led growth, where you'd be able to swipe a credit card. Onboarding would be pretty automated, right? Because of the fact that, like, in order to scale to, $1 million, $10 million, $100 million business, that has to be very low touch. But right now, it isn't. It can't be, right? I have to like really engage with all of our customers to make sure they're getting value, to like knock them over the head and force them to get value. Understand what the gaps are between what they want and what we're providing.
And in addition, building the product. Like, I know you have a co-founder, but you're still hearing, oh, hey, there's a bug, or hey, there's a feature. Like, you're trying to parse what's a product, feature set, and then also how do you get them to actually go out there and be that person on the sidewalk going like, use KeepTabs.
Yeah, exactly. So I think I mentioned trust and credibility. That I think comes from sharing expertise. So like, I have the advantage that I am the persona really that we're selling to. Like, I have spent decades doing marketing for VC funded businesses, and so and for PE backed businesses, for big giant corporate behemoths and stuff.
Yeah, the $500 million raise sort of businesses.
So it's like, I understand what those people's pain points are, what they're struggling with, the tools they're using, the frameworks they're using, and just have a lot of like scar tissue and expertise from doing things wrong that I can kind of share to help build that credibility. So sharing that on channels where people are looking to have their questions answered, whether it's communities where those people are already gathering. There's a lot of like Slack communities for marketers, or Reddit forums or something like that, which is its own headache and problem, to be honest. LinkedIn, that I think is like how you go about building that sort of credibility, by just
so it's
like
founder-led social like community, and that's working better than the SEO or anything else at the moment.
I tend to think so. I mean, when you look at, I look at like our B2B. Are you familiar with that? So
love him.
Adam Robinson, right? He has kind of created this. I think he coined it, this idea of like inbound led outbound or something, right? Where you are out there in the world sharing your expertise, essentially like a free consultant, giving away so much knowledge that people can't even believe they're getting it for free. And then like outbounding selectively to people who are already engaging with your content, with your website and stuff like that. You just see a much higher conversion rate in terms of like, your outreach email or whatever to meeting, when people already know who you are, when you've broken down that trust barrier, when they already follow you and trust your expertise. because ultimately, like what we're doing is we're productizing our expertise, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of like, we spot a problem in the market, we have a unique way to solve it, and we're building, baking that into our product in a way. And so in the early days, like the line between the founder and the product, I think, is relatively blurry.
Yeah, you're doing the sales, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the building. Now that trust building, it sounds like there's a lot of work. Like, do you have a balance in your day of like, I'm gonna carve out 4 hours for engaging with the community? Like, how do you balance that day?
I have no balance in my day. Are you kidding me? No. I think there are things I know are so high priority for me that I have to be doing them. Like, we're at this stage where, okay, so we've have built out kind of an initial product.
Yeah.
It is not as full featured as the product we will have by the end of the year, but it's good enough to have paying customers, right? And so I think my objective right now is to just get to as many paying customers as we can, to get that feedback loop really going, to understand from them, from our paying customers, what it is they want. And so that I know needs to be my core objective. Go ahead.
In there, paying customers, I think that's a unique thing that I keep hearing through conversations.
Yep.
Is there's a lot of noise, not only on the marketing side, but inbound of people giving opinions. We see it on Hacker News. Like, my favorite comment on Hacker News is a comment to Dropbox of like, I could do this with my NAS. Like, your product's never going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with you. Is it the paying customers have a vested interest? Like, how do you also filter that from the paying customer that paid for a month and dipped? Like, like, how do you parse all of that?
So I have two thoughts on this. One is related to product market fit, which I'll get to in a second. And one is related to like paying customers versus, let's call it like non-paying people advice, right? Which you get a lot of when you're first starting a company. Mm-hmm. And it's good to go seek out that advice, but there is nothing that's more valuable than hearing from somebody who's actually willing to spend money on a product. Like, somebody who's the smartest person ever, who, in my experience, like if they are a VP of marketing at a company that looks right, but they maybe don't care that much about competitive tracking because their industry is not dynamic enough, or for whatever reason, their advice is like a lot less important than somebody who kind of feels that pressure and pain and is actually willing to spend money on the product. And so, like,
early on, it's fit that ICP, because later on, and I think you've probably experienced this at Alloy, is it almost becomes a force function of like, force them to feel the pain, like make sure that they're missing out on it, versus early on it's overlook that person, ignore them. Like, if they don't hit back or respond, it's not 7 emails to them. It's like, go talk to the person there. And I think that's the big difference, right?
The other difference is that those customers that are paying have skin in the game.
Okay.
Like, when somebody, there's a correlation between the people who are using our product for free as beta testers and usage rates. The people who are actually paying for the product tend to just use it more, because they have skin in the game.
That's fair. On your usage, like, what do you measure as like the guiding light for you?
This is actually kind of hard, because as you know, one of the ways people consume our product is via Slack. Like Slack alerts, notifications. So like, one of our value propositions is that you don't need another tool to log into. Because of that, we can't measure like time in the product. That doesn't necessarily correlate to customer value. We can measure like how many alerts you get. We can measure the percentage of customers that have like even gone in and set up those alerts. Because the customers who don't set up their alerts, like, they pretty much don't engage and usually end up kind of churning off the product.
That was very fair, because the thing that keeps me engaged with it is I click a link and then go to KeepTabs and say, oh, this is the more information. And maybe sign in once a week where I'm like, oh, that looks really interesting. But it's also dependent on my competitors. Like,
what they're doing.
If they're moving really fast, I'd probably be signing in a lot more. Like, I think you use a demo for Asana on Monday and Trello. That whole industry is like lightning fast. Like,
I mean, like Monday, I saw, because that is my demo account, I'm tracking all the project management tools, And like Monday changes their pricing like 3 times a week, right? And so if you're a competitor of theirs, you have to stay on top of everything that's happening. Whereas, if you're tracking like IBM and SAP and, like kind of the boring ossified part, by the way, if they're listening and want to be a customer, I'd love to talk to you. I didn't mean that about you guys. But if you're tracking like the sort of older part of the industry that moves really slow, it might be less dynamic and you may not actually be the right customer for us. But in general, I do think like logins to the product are what we'd look at. And then, like our hope is that people are logging in a couple times a week to the product, meaning that they caught something in an alert that was interesting to them. They're going in and checking it out, right? Yeah. And then as we expand like the product features, I think there'll be sort of different things we look at. Like one of the things we've talked about doing, I don't know if I haven't talked about it like publicly, but we're going to begin building like API endpoints into our product so that people can connect to their agents, to Claude code, to things like that. So, and instead of connecting to 10 different APIs and like 25 different crawlers they have to maintain to bring all of this together, they'll be able to just sort of plug their agents into one turnkey API to get everything competitive, right?
And I think that's really powerful because MCPs, APIs are all becoming something out there. If you compare together HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever CRM data, I think you integrate with Gong, and then you have the competitive information. Okay, not yet. You're working on it. Yeah. A little future set, but all of that together gives a competitive intelligence that's different.
Yep.
How do people actually do something with that data? Like sometimes I see pricing changes with Monday or a competitor. Should I be changing my prices? What do you like give the advice, out of free advice out there? What are you telling people to do with your data?
Yeah, I feel like I saw a meme one time where like every single question you ask a marketer, the answer is always, it depends. And that's kind of what it feels like here. Like it just depends. There's so much happening in markets. Markets are like emergent phenomenons, right? Mm-hmm. They're not static. They depend on like all kinds of things other companies are doing. Just because a competitor drops their price doesn't mean it's actually a good thing that they should have done. You know what I mean? And they may very well pull it back up. Like I've seen a ton of companies that are constantly kind of testing things out, testing out a different CTA, changing the CTA on their homepage or something like that, right?
Especially with pricing. I see pricing go up, down, left, right constantly, and it never stays stagnant. And then if you try to copy them, you end up in like the similar cycle of like, well, this kind of works, that one kind of doesn't. But how do you parse that noise then? Like,
well,
it's the hard part. That depends, and I get like I'm 100% on it, but like how would you tell a startup founder today if they were sitting in the room with us? How do you parse that and make an informed decision that's going to be impactful?
I think the starting point is just knowing what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. So that is already puts you ahead of probably a ton of different companies who are just operating in the dark largely, or just opportunistically or ad hoc, even keeping tabs on their market, right? So the first thing you have to do is just understand like what those important signals are, like pricing changes, feature launches, things like that. Competitors moving into new ICPs. I think like that's step number one. Mm-hmm. Step number two, I think, is understanding your own feature set and ICP compared to your competitors, right? Because just because a competitor raises their prices, like they may very well have a higher average deal size than you. They may be going after a very different segment of the market. Like for us, we are, tend to be looking at like mid-market and like smaller companies, right? And so if a competitor of ours were to raise their prices, it's like, cool, you guys can have enterprise. Like that's not where we're focused, right? Yeah. And so I think understanding like that dynamic and understanding like, well, enterprises are going to want like this particular feature. Just because competitor number two is building that feature out doesn't mean you need to necessarily chase that. It's sort of about, informing your own kind of thinking about your own roadmap, like what you're building and who you're building it for. If you do have a direct competitor going after the same ICP who is seeing success with a certain move, maybe they're launching a certain type of campaign on, LinkedIn or Google Ads or something like that, and they've been doing it consistently for a while, they've been in market longer, that's something you should stop and look at and try to understand. From like an SEO perspective, if you see certain types of content that's driving a lot of clicks to your competitors, around keywords with like low difficulty scores, that's something you should think about like actioning against, right? But in general, I think like whether or not you should blow up your roadmap because a competitor launched something, in most cases, I'd say the answer is probably no. You shouldn't do that. You should be informed, kind of like, because like I said, markets are emergent phenomenon, right? Like they're constantly moving and dynamic, and you need to look at like, is competitor 2 like actually kind of moving more down market into wherever your like domain of genius is, right, for your product.
Fair.
Yeah.
The part that I'm hearing, the part that's a through line through all of the conversations is it seems like your unfair advantage here is your marketing background. And you built a product that's service to you more than anything. And your domain knowledge is that your market, essentially. Is that something like more founders should be doing, where their unfair advantage is like whatever they're focused on? If somebody's focused on fashion, they love fashion, they built a startup, or is it sometimes like better that they go into a new market where they're like, I don't know finance, but I know this is a problem because I don't know it? Like, where do you think that lies?
I think it depends.
It's a classic marker.
Yeah. I mean, I've had conversations with founders where they've said like, how do I get early customers? I have no idea how to do it. And oftentimes I will say like, open up your Rolodex, go to your LinkedIn contacts and just reach out to like 10 people in your ICP and ask them to use your product. And if you don't have 10 people in your ICP that would actually want to use your product, then you should probably question whether you're the right person to be building that product at all. I tend to think that like expertise matters a lot, especially in certain industries. Like if you're just a developer, not just if you're just a developer.
Well, with AI today, it could be just a developer.
Yeah. So if you're a developer and you're trying to create this type of product, you're, I think, going to struggle against companies that have deep domain knowledge and are able to bake that in. Like especially as AI becomes more pervasive, as it does more of the sort of like workflows that are downstream of just intelligence collection. A lot of that's going to come down to the prompting. It's going to come down to the output, right? And AI models are probabilistic. Like they're, it's like you feed them slightly different stuff and you get dramatically different outcomes. And knowing like what outcome your customer actually wants and will be the most useful to them is kind of like a superpower. It just helps you provide value a lot faster. And that's extremely hard to do if you don't know your industry pretty well. Now, I have heard of companies, Carta being one of them, where they actually went to like, they shadowed a whole bunch of, attorneys and finance people working on cap tables for like a couple of weeks. Like literally they had their product team standing over their shoulders, watching every click they made, watching everything they did, and took that and like internalized that and basically baked that into their product. That's perhaps another way around that. Like they may not have started out as the company that knew the most about that, but they quickly became the company that put in more work to understand how your customers actually work than anybody else. And so
it is often understanding the customer, putting their shoes on and walking a day in their life.
Yeah, that's everything.
Yeah,
I mean, I know that I'm like as a consultant, I'm sure you've come into businesses before and like haven't had that sort of expertise, but like what I feel like makes the difference between good agencies and crappy agencies, or good consultants and crappy consultants, is that you're able to like very quickly get up to speed on an industry, to ask the right questions, to understand the customer need. So I think that that's true of like being a founder too. You have to really understand it. And even as a founder and as a marketer for a long time, like I'm still learning things about how different industries use the competitive intelligence that they see coming in our product.
Fair.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been fun.
That makes one of us.
The competitive intelligence space, like when you first told me about it, I was a little skeptical on it because marketers, our budgets are thin. They get cut first, and I think the one conversation part here again that I keep seeing these through lines of everything is marketing is tied to sales, and sales is tied to marketing. I know you've talked about battle cards and all of that. It's it is a part of life that you got to have a skill in marketing, you got to have a skill in sales, and building those startups are never easy, and most of it's unscalable, like you're saying. Anything that you would tell a startup founder today that, like, when you started this journey, or even yourself when you first started, like, what would you tell somebody on the journey to do a startup?
I saw a shirt from Brickyard. Do you know Brickyard? They're like an incubator.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They had a shirt that says, "Hang in there, it gets worse." Like, I thought that I thought it was going to be a lot easier than it actually turned out to be. That's probably naivete, right?
But I think it's needed when building that startup a little bit.
Yeah. I think that sometimes the problem that you are setting out to solve is not actually the problem the market needs solved. Like, I thought that bringing all of the competitive activity together in one place was the problem, but that's not the problem. Actually, the real problem that customers face is just like finding the signal in the noise, right? Mm-hmm. There's so much noise happening in the market all the time. Most of what is happening in your market at any given time is actually largely probably pretty irrelevant. So it's about like the 1 to 5 different things per competitor, per week, per month, or whatever, that you actually really, really need to know are happening. I think that's true for a lot of different founders. That the problem they're actually setting out to solve, if they talk to enough customers using their product in early days, may find that it's actually a slightly different problem that you need to solve in order to get to giving your customers the value they need.
Backing up to, you had a problem, like, the problem that you were solving, obviously there, like, how did you discover that was different than the problem that you originally started with? Because it was your problem. You experienced it, and then all of a sudden you've talked to more people and it's changed. Like, how did you come to terms with that?
Yeah, I'll call out Zach from GiveKit, who was one of our first beta customers. And I remember, like, because he was one of our first betas, at this point we have like thousands of news articles from his entire market in the product. Mm-hmm. And when we pulled together all of the social, all of the ads, all of the website changes and pricing changes and news and reviews, it was like unusable. There was just so much information that, like, as he's CEO of that company, like, he doesn't have time to wade through that, right? Like, if you're a full-time marketer, maybe you can make the case it's your job. But he just wanted something that was going to, like, elevate the most important stuff to him, right? So that's what we had to build. And that was feedback that came directly from him. It's like, okay, cool, I see everything here, but it's like just a blindingly large amount of, like, data. And how do you tell me what's most important? Which is where the AI really sings.
And that might have been your blind spot because you were the marketer. You could go in and just kind of parse it and go, these 5 things probably matter.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody without he had a software background, he's going to look at that and go, ooh, that's like what actually matters. It's just like if you walk into the kitchen with a bunch of ingredients, it's like, what do I do with this? But the chef's going to walk in and go, ooh, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things we baked into the AI agents. So we have agents that are basically reading every update that comes through, every navigation change on a website, every change to a terms of service agreement or
That's
something.
my favorite part is the term of service.
Yeah.
As just a side note, is that is a huge signal to what's going to happen. If somebody puts in new terms on, like, for example, I saw it with a bank. A bank added new terms for prediction market stuff, and I was like, oh, they're going to hit the prediction markets. And 4 weeks later, they're talking about prediction markets, and I think that's going to be your first sign, because everyone goes to legal in some capacity and goes, hey, how do we cover our butt on all of this?
Totally. Yeah. Oftentimes they have to sign off on terms before they'll sign off on anything else, right? And so that is one of the first places you begin to see changes.
It's a fun place to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's impossible to do manually.
Yes.
Like, nobody's going through those documents and comparing them. No. But that's one of the things that the AI in the product does so well, is it like not only identifies a change, but interprets the strategic meaning of that change, right? It says, like, hey, this changed in the terms of service, like, that could indicate this. Or, your competitor added a new navigation item on their website. That could strategically indicate that they're moving into a new ICP or geography or something like that. And so, I think, yeah.
No. To wrap it up, where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so they can find us at www.keeptabs.ai. They can go there, sign up, check out what we do. I'm at LinkedIn/in/Franklin Morris.
Okay.
My name,
We'll put
not
those in the-
Franklin Morrison.
Not Franklin Morrison. We'll put it all in the show notes.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you having on here, and I'm sure the editing team will have a lot of fun editing.
Okay. Do.
I appreciate it.